Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm here again with Hope Gurion in our next installment in our org transformation series. If you've been following along in our most recent video, we talked about one of the most common mistakes teams make when kicking off an org transformation. And that was this idea of should we train all of our teams at once, and how that often leads to some chaos. And what we recommended in that video that you actually start with some pilot teams. Pilot teams allow you to kind of surface where there's going to be challenges in the organization, keep it a little bit more constrained so it's less chaotic and you're able to learn as you go. So Hope, to kick us off, do you want to start with just, if I'm a product leader thinking about this, how many pilot teams should I be choosing?
Yeah. I would say you don't want to choose a single product team, and you don't want to choose too many pilot teams. You want to choose somewhere like 2, 3, 4-ish pilot teams. So again, depending on the number of total product teams in your org, maybe you might do 1 or 2, or if you have a very large org, you might want to do a little bit more than that, but you want it to be a manageable number.
Okay, so if I'm a tiny company, I have 3 teams, I might start with 1.
You might.
If I'm a little bigger, I might pick 2 or 3. And then if I'm giant, I might pick 5.
Yes.
What's sort of the constraint? Why am I picking only a few teams?
Yeah. Each team is going to run into different challenges and is going to have a different composition of people, skills, product types. And so if you just choose one team at one end of the extreme, an awful lot has to be right with that one team to learn whether it will work for that team, whether it will work for the org. When you increase the number of teams, you tend to learn more. You can pattern spot a little bit better. But if you have too many pilot teams at once, it's going to be hard for you to manage and be able to provide the support and coaching to enable those teams to be successful and to troubleshoot when they run into challenges. So that's why it's sort of this sweet spot of 2 to 4-ish types of teams, depending on the size of your org.
Yeah, you know what I'm hearing is we're setting up a compare and contrast decision, right?
Yes,
across all of our teams. What are the different obstacles they're coming up with? What types of teams are going to get this the best? Who needs the most help? Which is going to enable when we roll it out company wide. What do we need to be prepared for?
Absolutely.
Okay, I know you have, I think it's 5 factors that we should consider when choosing teams. Do you want to give us the overview of the 5?
Yep. So here's the 5 things that I recommend product leaders look at when they're selecting their pilot teams. They want to consider the relationships amongst the team members. They want to think about the mindset of those individuals on the teams. How willing to learn are they? The skills that are resident within the people on those teams, their access to their target customers, and the life stage of their product.
Okay, perfect. Let's dig into each of these. So tell me about what we're looking for with relationships on the team.
For relationships, it's hard for a team to really, work together effectively if they're just meeting each other for the very first time. So you're looking for people who have some depth of relationship with one another. Maybe they've worked together on the same team for some period of time, or maybe they've worked together in the past on different teams, but they do have a relationship with each other. We don't want to put strangers together and expect them to just nail it, work together effectively on day one. So we're looking for mutual respect and we're looking for familiarity with each other.
I think there's also something around just working styles. Like I know I coached one team where the engineer and the designer just were at each other's throats over everything. Totally lovely people could not agree on a single thing.
Yeah.
And then later I actually coached them again on different teams and they totally got it and it was great. But it was just their working styles didn't work with each other.
Yeah. So if you have team members that have familiarity, if they don't know and trust each other, if they don't like working together, I would not recommend putting them together in a pilot team.
For sure. Okay, let's talk a little bit about a willingness mindset.
Yeah. So as for most people moving to an outcome-oriented way of working, they're going to be doing a lot of things for the first time. they're going to run into challenges. I've never done this before. It's uncomfortable, right? Like there's going to be quite a bit. If you have a fixed mindset as opposed to a growth mindset, if you are sort of very attached to the status quo, right? You're not going to be approaching this experiment with a willingness to learn. And so we want to make sure that we've got people who are open-minded enough to embrace the inevitable challenges that come with learning new things, new ways of working, and bringing that willingness to the table so that they can persevere when they hit those inevitable challenges and moments of discomfort.
So this might be like we're looking for our early adopters. So maybe they've read Marty Kagan's books, or they've read Continuous Discovery Habits, or they've been to a conference and came back excited about some of these ideas, showing that they're like always looking for new things and kind of have that early adopter mindset.
Yeah, that's a great signal to help you think about who might be a candidate for this. They're always looking at new ways of doing things. It's a great signal that you could get as a product leader.
What if this is all just brand new to my organization and nobody's heard of it? Can I just ask for volunteers? Like, what are other ways to evaluate willingness?
Yeah, that's a great example. Like, who's raising their hand for this?
Yeah.
If you've got to hunt them down and find them, and you're dragging them in to being part of a pilot team, if they're not showing up, I was working with a client recently. She had a whole information session for the pilot teams. Many members of those pilot teams did not show up to the information session.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a signal that maybe they're not that into you. Yeah. And so you might need to rethink who's on your pilot teams.
I like that framing a lot. Okay, let's talk about skills. What skills am I looking for?
So we want to have a skills complete team, right? Now, even if they've never worked this way, we know inevitably they're going to be learning new skills. But if they've never been in an engineering role and they're the tech lead on your pilot team, they're going to have too many things that they need to learn. We're looking to develop incremental skills. So we want to have a capable product manager, a capable product designer, a capable engineering lead, right? Again, we're not expecting them to know exactly what to do, but if they've never operated in that role before, they're probably going to have too many things to learn to be an effective pilot team.
Yeah, I think we've seen this a lot where we get a team that's all junior right out of college. They're still learning how to have jobs. Like, that's too much to add this on top of. Or the person who just moved into a product management role and they're still trying to figure out what product management is. Mm-hmm. So I think here what you're saying is when we're looking at skill, we don't want our beginners. They may eventually have to learn this way of working. We want everybody to. But for our pilot teams, we're trying to pick the teams that are most likely to have success.
Yes.
And so we want people that are mature in their roles, early adopters, where really what they're focusing on is what's new with this way of working and not a bunch of other stuff.
Exactly right. And this is why that previous one, that willingness mindset, is so critical, because you could have somebody very experienced as a product owner, or as a graphic designer, and think that they have the skills to work this way. And so we want to, again, think about yes, they're experienced in a certain way of doing things, but we want to make sure that they have the skills to know how to do, say, interaction design, or, product management that includes strategy, not just backlog management. So we want them, again, they're probably going to be learning some new things. So we want them to embrace that there might be more to the role than what they've always done.
I think that there's something I want to highlight here, because I think sometimes we see skill negatively interacts with willingness. And so what made me think about this was you talked about a graphic designer moving into interaction design. We actually see sometimes with UXers, they come into this thinking, I already know how to do it. And then they think they have the skill to work this way, and it interferes a little bit with their willingness to learn maybe the difference between a project mindset and a continuous mindset.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. So again, but the beauty is all of that gets exposed in the pilot team model.
For sure. Okay, tell me about customer access.
Yeah. So one of the foundations, right? It's part of the definition of continuous discovery, right? Weekly touch points with customers. So you need to make sure that your team is going to be able to interact with customers.
Yeah.
Maybe not every week, but getting closer to every week during this pilot phase. So we want to make sure that if there's any obstacles, barriers, real or imagined,
Yeah.
that those teams are set up for success and do have access to customers that they can learn from. Because without that, they're not going to make progress on their outcomes.
And they don't, like, I know for our programs, like coming in, they don't have to know how to recruit.
Right.
That's not what we mean by access to customers. Like, we can teach them, how do you find someone to talk to? I think the barriers we see that we can't help them overcome are things like your sales team doesn't let the product team talk to customers. Like, there has to be some work at the executive level to remove some of those barriers.
Yes.
Or like our legal or compliance team requires they go through a 6-week training before they're allowed to talk to customers. And you're starting your pilot team before they've gone through that 6-week training. So it's more of these like institutional barriers to accessing customers, not know-how barriers.
Yes. Beautiful clarification.
Awesome. Okay, I think we have one more. Tell me about product life cycle stage.
Yes. So, and not every team uses this framing, or sometimes people refer to it differently. So there's the explore, invest, sustain, sunset, or there's explore, exploit. Like there's a couple of different framings of this, but here's what I recommend is that we want to focus on pilot teams that are either at an explore or invest stage. When you're working on a product that's in sustain, it's usually about just keeping that product available, performant, bug-free. We're not trying to increment value creation on that product. We want it to keep delivering the value. Yeah. And so there's usually not as much discovery required, and the outcomes are pretty much keep it working as it's always worked. So, and then sunset, there is some discovery, or if you're trying to re-platform a product, that's another one that you could do some discovery, but there's going to be probably a lot of challenges for that team to create an outcome. And so explore or invest typically provide the most learning room for a team. And so that's usually what we recommend. It's not impossible with the others, but you get more learning velocity with an explore or invest stage product.
Yeah, what I like about this is that, like, I recently recorded a video that said your replatforming teams absolutely should do discovery, but they're not your best pilot teams, right? Like, yes, eventually you want your platform teams to learn how to work this way, or your replatforming teams to learn how to work this way, because they will benefit. But when we're looking at the point of a pilot team is to help us surface the sort of organizational challenges we have to tackle to be able to spread this across the organization. We want the teams that can move fast. And that's typically not those replatforming teams.
Exactly.
I think also there's a lot of like cognitive dissonance with replatforming teams on how this works, because there's just this acknowledgement that like we're just building feature parity, and it's hard to chip away at that.
Yes.
Okay, but so you said explore, which could be a 0 to 1 product. It could be we're looking for a brand new product, or it could be invest, in which case we have a product, but the phrase I really love that you said was we're looking for how to add value to the product. So we're not just in sustain mode.
Yep.
Okay, this is great. I feel like I can even imagine a little visual we can create of like a checklist for people to think about when they're picking their pilot teams.
Yes.
So maybe we'll add that in the links.
Yes.
Any last thoughts?
I think the only other thought would be, like people are people, and people might like the idea of being on a pilot team, and then they may encounter resistance and they may no longer like being on a pilot team. And I think you just, again, that willingness to learn, the relationships help keep a team persevering when things get challenging, or when like this isn't as easy as the old way of doing things. Like that's going to happen. And so again, that willingness and the relationships is going to help a team persevere.
Yeah. And we're in our upcoming videos, we're going to get into how do we support these teams as they're going through the pilot. The thing that I'll end with is just to remember, when you're choosing your pilot teams, You want to choose the teams that are most likely to have success working this way. Our goal is to create a bright spot in your organization to show it can work. So you don't want to pick the team that's on a PIP. You don't want to pick the team that needs the most coaching. We're looking at mature teams that function well, that have a willingness to learn, which is why I really love this set of criteria. All right. Thank you, Hope.
Thanks.